I love Xpand Rally. This is the game that made me fall in love with racing games. I played this game religiously back when it came out. Why wouldn't I? The cars were amazing, the levels are very well designed, and well, even the main menu aesthetics was something that I've never seen before. I have the same thing to say about Xpand Rally Xtreme, the sequel to Xpand Rally. However, recently I have realized something. I found myself having more fun with Xpand Rally more than Xpand Rally Xtreme. Why is that? Recently I have also noticed that people in my comment sections say that Xpand Rally Xtreme is better than Xpand Rally. Again, why is that? Different taste, I guess, but don't worry, I will also talk about it in this video later. Like I said before, I found myself having more fun with Xpand Rally than Xpand Rally Xtreme. Both of these games are almost identical, however there are some key differences between them. Because of that, in this video we are going to answer the question: is Xpand Rally better than Xpand Rally Xtreme? Also, are you supposed to say Rally or Rally? I've heard people say that both pronunciations are correct, so I don't know anymore. Also, this video is inspired by JarekTheGamingDragon, so this video will be in a similar style to his. Just wanted to point that out. Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it. Okay, now let's talk about the Xpand Rally games. The first Xpand Rally game came out in 2004. Back then, graphically it was one of the best looking games at that time. I mean, sure, there were games like Half-Life 2 and Far Cry 1 which looked way better than this. However, if we focus only on the racing genre, no other game looked better than Xpand Rally at that time. Now, you could argue that in 2004 we also had the first Flatout and Burnout Free Takedown. However, this is where things get tricky. Burnout Free Takedown came out on PS2 and the original Xbox, which means it had console limitations. The first Flatout, however, did come out on PC, however it was still held back by its console ports, PS2 and the original Xbox. Not as much as the Burnout Free Takedown, but it was still held back. Meanwhile, Xpand Rally never had this problem. Oh yeah, and don't forget about Richard Burns Rally. This also came out in 2004. However, Richard Burns Rally doesn't really hold up graphically nowadays. Also, here's a fun fact. Did you know that Richard Burns Rally came out the exact same day as Xpand Rally? Crazy, huh? But let's get back on topic. The colors in Xpand Rally and Xpand Rally Xtreme are very vibrant. Both of these games are very colorful. The texture work is solid, the graphical options do what they're supposed to do, and overall, both of these games hold up quite well graphically. Xpand Rally Xtreme also holds up even better, since Techland actually wanted to improve the graphics from the original Xpand Rally. Sure, some people may call graphics in Xpand Rally Xtreme bloomy, but personally I never had a problem with this. The original Xpand Rally is also bloomy, however the bloom here is very small. Such good graphics come with a bit of a price. Because those games came out in 2004 and 2006 respectively, there is no widescreen resolution and there is no FOV slider. Remember when I said this video is heavily inspired by JarekTheGamingDragon? Yes, I have to talk about the FOV. To be fair, both of these games have a default FOV of 85, which is only slightly subpar, but I would prefer having more FOV. You can fix the FOV in the game files, however you have to do this for every single car individually, and this is very annoying. That's why the footage you're seeing right now has 85 FOV and 1600 by 1200 resolution. Speaking of resolution, this is actually easier to fix than the FOV. All you have to do is to look for an src file, and then you type your new resolution there, you save the file, and you're done. You can play the game at 1080p. Alright, we're done talking about the graphics. Now let's talk about the story. There is none. Just like that, both of these games do not have a story. Just like in Gran Turismo, you buy new cars, you race against others, and you try your best to win. That's it. Normally I would complain about this, but to be honest, I don't have a problem with this. I personally believe that racing games do not need to have a story to be good. To make racing games good, you need good controls, good cars, and make racing fun. Which brings us to our next point, comparing the games. Both of these games have the same formula. 6 giant maps with many different tracks and many vehicles. The first Xpand Rally game has many different vehicles, ranging from weak ones, normal ones, and the best of the best kind of ones. Each car in those games feel differently. Different speeds, different weight, different controls. Xpand Rally Xtreme tried to improve the roster by adding 4x4 giant trucks and hypercars. There is a problem, however. While Xpand Rally Xtreme added those giant cars and hypercars, they removed the weak and normal cars because Techland wanted to game Xpand Rally Xtreme, well, extreme. I am perfectly fine with Techland adding giant trucks and hypercars, but what I am not okay with is Techland removing weak cars and normal cars. Why? There is so much you can do with these. You can still make the game extreme without removing them. Because of this weird and, let's be honest, quite stupid decision, the original Xpand Rally has bigger car roster, and a more impressive one too. Not to mention that the cars in Xpand Rally Xtreme behave almost the same as the cars in Xpand Rally. Now, you could argue that this was intentional, and I mean, sure, they did tweak the driving physics a little bit, but yeah, just a little bit. In the first Xpand Rally game, every single car sounds unique, which indicates what kind of car you're driving. For example, your car sounds weak, then you're driving a weak car. Your car sounds powerful, then you're driving a very good car. Meanwhile, in Xpand Rally Xtreme, despite the game being, well, extreme, almost every single car sounds the same. More specifically, almost every single car sounds like center court. Now don't get me wrong, I love the sound of center court in both of these games. The problem is when almost every single car has the sound of the center court, the sounds are stale. That's why the car sounds in Xpand Rally Xtreme cannot compare to the car sounds in Xpand Rally. Time to compare another thing. Career modes in both of these games. Personally, I think that the first Xpand Rally game has a better crafted career mode. Let me tell you how it looks like in the original Xpand Rally. A small championship, a special stage, another small championship, a boss fight, a series of special stages, a new championship. You see what I mean here? Let me tell you how it looks like in Xpand Rally Xtreme. A big championship with 8 stages. Premium Stage 1, 2 Extreme Off-Road stages. A new championship with 12 stages. Premium Stage 2, 3 Extreme Off-Road races. You see what I mean here? The first Xpand Rally game is very creative with its career mode. Meanwhile, Xpand Rally Xtreme has a certain consistency. It's mostly good, but nothing stands out. Not to mention that Xpand Rally Xtreme has also less stages than Xpand Rally. The first Xpand Rally game has 77 stages. Xpand Rally Xtreme has 69 stages. Now I know what you're thinking. Haha, 69, haha, very funny. But seriously, Xpand Rally Xtreme actually has 69 stages. Let's quickly go back to that creativity thing. In the original Xpand Rally, sometimes you can't unlock new stages on the go. Sometimes you have to complete a stage later just so you can go back to that special stage earlier. That is creative. Meanwhile, in Xpand Rally Xtreme, the progression is bland. For example, you've completed a championship? Cool, here are some new stages. Or what? You've completed those stages already? Well, here's a new championship. You see what I mean here? I wouldn't really have a problem with this if the maps in Xpand Rally Xtreme were a bit more creative. I'm not saying they're bad, I just want them to be a bit more creative. Which brings us to our next point, the map design. Both of these games have 6 maps, 5 normal maps and 1 training map. I actually can't complain about the training map in Xpand Rally Xtreme because Techland actually wanted to improve the map being Germany in the game files. For example, they added new obstacles. They made the cars more easily destructible because the game is extreme. What I do have a problem with are the remaining 5 maps. More specifically, the remaining 5 maps in Xpand Rally Xtreme. In the first Xpand Rally game, every single one of those maps were very creative with its tracks. And by creative, I mean you could do hundreds and hundreds of stages just with one map. And since there are 5 of them, the possibilities are endless. When you compare it to Xpand Rally Xtreme, the tracks in Xpand Rally Xtreme are not as creative as they were in the first Xpand Rally game. Like I've said before, they are not bad, they are just less creative, okay? Now, because Xpand Rally Xtreme wanted to add those hypercars, or should I say they added those hypercars to the game, there are now stages dedicated to those hypercars. I like the idea. As a matter of fact, these are actually some of the best stages in that game, but this is not enough to make the game more varied. Here's another example. The original Xpand Rally game had Finland, one of my favorite maps in any racing game ever. Very snowy, very hard to drive through, and a very challenging map. Meanwhile, Xpand Rally Xtreme doesn't even have a snow map. Oh, I'm sorry, snowy map. Or should I say snowy map. To make this even worse or funnier, depending on your point of view, there are winter tires in Xpand Rally Xtreme. You know, the ones that can protect you from ice and snow. And since there aren't any snowy maps or icy maps in Xpand Rally Xtreme, what's the point of adding them? Actually, you know what? I take that back. There is one good thing about those winter tires in Xpand Rally Xtreme. You can make challenge videos, but that's pretty much it. Just a challenge video. Now let's talk about the soundtrack in these games. The soundtrack in Xpand Rally is really good. Combine the soundtrack of this game with the main menu aesthetics or the replays, they sound amazing. They fit the tone of the game perfectly. Just racing, normal racing. Xpand Rally Xtreme, on the other hand, has a more heavy soundtrack. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. It fits the extreme aesthetic of Xpand Rally Xtreme perfectly. The problem with the soundtrack in Xpand Rally Xtreme is that it's not as good. While I remember most songs from Xpand Rally Xtreme, I only remember one replay song. That's not a good sign. Meanwhile, I can remember almost every single song or track in the first Xpand Rally game. If you haven't done it already, go listen to the first Xpand Rally soundtrack. Believe me, it's really good. And now we are going to compare the final thing in this video, the difficulty. Now, to give credit where it's due, both Xpand Rally games are pretty hard. The difference is Xpand Rally Xtreme is harder. Way harder. Now, when I say way harder, I don't mean it like way harder in a fun, challenging way. I am saying way harder in the way of difficulty spikes. In the first Xpand Rally game, the difficulty is pretty consistent. Sure, there are some stages that are way harder than it should be. For example, that one stage that has 5 laps in Kenya. But most of the time, the challenge in Xpand Rally is pretty fun. In Xpand Rally Xtreme, it works like this. The first championship, and then the first premium stage, and then the 2 extreme off-road stages are pretty easy, and you should be able to complete this without any problems. But after you complete those, then you are at the 20-25% mark. Oh, sorry, I meant to say 20 to 25% completion mark. After you reach this point in Xpand Rally Xtreme, the game becomes hard for all the wrong reasons. The main reason being perfect AI. You see, after you get to that point, the AI doesn't make any mistakes. Now compare this to the original Xpand Rally. The AI makes mistakes constantly. When you're close to the end of the original Xpand Rally, they don't make that many mistakes, but they still make them nonetheless. And because of that, you still have a chance to win. In Xpand Rally Xtreme, this simply doesn't happen. You need to be perfect if you want to win in that game. and that is, or should I say, can be very frustrating. To prove my point here, I'm going to tell you about the worst offender in this game. The World Rally League Championship. No, not WRC, WRL. World Rally League. The WRC has a trademark, so I can't say that in that video. This championship has 28 stages. Yes, you heard that right. 28 very difficult stages. To make this worse, during this championship, there are 2 special events, each of them being 3 stages long. The Moonlight Challenges and Front Wheel Drive Trials. These 2 events especially are incredibly annoying for 2 reasons. The Moonlight Challenge is infuriating because, well, you race in the dark, you can't really see anything. Even though the visibility in those games is fine, racing in the dark is not very fun in Xpand Rally Xtreme. And when it comes to front wheel drive trials, you have to use the cars from the very first group. Yes, there are groups in Xpand Rally and Xpand Rally Xtreme. In Xpand Rally Xtreme there are only 4, while in Xpand Rally there are many groups. In the first car group in Xpand Rally Xtreme there are only 4 cars, which means you don't have much of a choice which car to use. To make things worse, the perfect AI combined with the insanely upgraded AI cars makes these challenges very hard for all the wrong reasons. Most championships in Xpand Rally Xtreme also have these problems, but in the World Rally League Championship it's the most noticeable, and because of that the World Rally League Championship is definitely the low point. Oh, I just remembered one more thing about the graphics. Pay attention to animals crossing the roads or animals anywhere in the game. While you're racing, you will notice something pretty cool. I won't spoil what it is, see it for yourself. Now that we've talked about all of that, I think we can answer the question. Is Xpand Rally better than Xpand Rally Xtreme? In my opinion, yes. However, I think a lot of people will disagree with me on that statement. If you want to disagree with me, that's completely fine, but please remember this one thing. This video is based from my observations and not other people's observations. Now, yes, I've said something about addressing the fact that people in my comment section seem to like Xpand Rally Xtreme more. And that statement is true, because there are a lot of people in my comment sections that like Xpand Rally Xtreme more than Xpand Rally. But I think that's because of a little something I called the recency bias. Let me explain. About few months ago I've made a video titled Xpand Rally Xtreme 15 years later, and I've said a lot of positive things about this game. And also I talked about the same bad things in this video. So I think both of those videos perfectly represent my thoughts on Xpand Rally Xtreme. Because of that video, a lot of people got the idea that Xpand Rally Xtreme is a good game, and don't get me wrong, it is a good game. As a matter of fact, I think you should go play it despite all the faults I've mentioned in this video. So what's the problem? I think both Xpand Rally and Xpand Rally Xtreme represent two different subgenres. For example, the first Xpand Rally came out back in 2004, and back then people were making this grounded in reality racing games. They weren't crazy, they were just normal racing games where you could just sit, play, chill out, and have fun. Xpand Rally Xtreme came out 2 years after Xpand Rally, in 2006. If there's one thing you should know about 2006, there was a certain trend. This in racing games. This trend being making every single racing game as crazy and as extreme as possible. Crash Day, Flat Out 2, Need for Speed Carbon, and many, many more. Xpand Rally Xtreme really wanted to be like one of those extreme games, more specifically Flat Out 2, more than Crash Day, but it also wanted to have that thing that Xpand Rally was known for. This thing is something I call grounded in reality racing. I know this sounds stupid to you, but I will explain this in the future. There's not enough time for me to talk about this grounded in reality thing right now. So I'm sorry, I am not going to explain this in this video. I mean, the video is already 26 minutes long, so I'm just going to say this. Even if I said that Xpand Rally is better than Xpand Rally Xtreme, because that's my opinion, you don't have to agree with it, like I've said before, you can always try those games out for yourself. Maybe you'll have the same opinion as me, maybe you will disagree with me, and that is completely fine. That's why I'm going to say that right now, as I'm recording this video, there is a Steam summer sale. So now you can get both of these games really, really cheap. I definitely recommend buying those games on Steam, because who knows when there will be another sale. I definitely recommend you both of these games, and I think everyone should play them. And that ends my TED Talk. Well, this is the end of this analysis. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I've said in my previous video, this is my new style of content. Content that is very similar to JarekTheGamingDragon's content, but I want to do my own thing with it. That my own thing being racing games. Since JarekTheGamingDragon doesn't do racing games content. I've never seen anyone make these videos about racing games, and that's why I thought I want to give it a try. Maybe you will like it, maybe you won't. But like I've said in my previous video, this kind of content the content that I used to do doesn't satisfy me anymore. I want to try new things. And one of those things is exactly videos like these, like this one. And hopefully you will find it entertaining. If not, well, then I don't know what to do, to be honest. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and well, I'll see you next time, pros. Goodbye.